What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in this video I wanted to go over the 4-speed transmissions here on the Crew 2. Now I personally feel like a lot of players are probably not going to enjoy using these vehicles because, for one, they can be kind of annoying to actually drive because of the way they shift, and if you guys are running manual, a lot of these vehicles are probably going to be a nightmare. Now I'm not saying they're going to be like the worst thing ever because they are drivable, but it will end up taking a good amount of time to get used to how these vehicles actually drive with the way they shift as well. Now, I'm going to be honest though, if you are running automatic, you're probably not going to be affected by this as much, even though these cars are still kind of wonky to drive even in automatic. So for example, the Cadillac Cyclone only has 4 gears, and I notice this vehicle doesn't accelerate all that well. I might even admit it, this might be one of the slowest cars in the street class over everything else, which really isn't a bad thing. I mean, looking at the vehicle, I'm not expecting something like that to go insanely quick and keep up with the Lamborghini, but also driving it in some of the events though, you're probably going to hate the car a lot because of the way it drives, and I noticed finding myself shifting into third and fourth with it a lot and then going back down into second and redlining it. And that could be one of the annoying things when running manual in these vehicles, is the fact that, well, you will most likely find yourself over shifting the vehicle when you don't need to. You'll end up going down into third when you really should be in fourth, or you'll go down into second when you should be in third. I did find myself doing this a good amount of times. Now, I'm going to be honest though, guys, I don't think this is going to be like a game-breaking issue because obviously the vehicles are geared differently, and many of these cars are probably 4 speeds in real life for that matter as well. So it's not like I'm hating on them or anything, but it's going to take a little time to get used to how they drive. Now, messing around with the 4 speeds for a good amount of time and trying to figure out how they really drive, I did notice if you do drive that one car for a good amount of time, you're most likely going to get better with how that car shifts and or get way faster on a lot of events with it. I ended up testing out the latest Mazda RX3 a little bit as well, and I'm going to admit it, this is probably going to be my favorite 4-speed transmission vehicle in the entire game at the moment. The way this car can turn and the way it actually shifts is really not that bad, and running this thing in manual, I did find myself being in the right gear a lot more often than when I was using like the Cyclone or one of the other cars as well. I did find this one to be a lot better in that aspect, and I do think that's something to look at. So I would say the Cyclone is probably going to be the worst 4-speed transmission vehicle in the entire game if I had to guess, and also throw in this car is kind of slow as well. Now, if you take a look at like the Crown Victoria, I do think that car is also going to be pretty decent. I did end up doing a good amount of races in this car as well just to test it out, and I actually found the car to be pretty good for the most part. Now, obviously it's probably not going to be the fastest thing out there. If I had to guess, I would say all the 4 speeds are going to be at some type of disadvantage. And the main reason for this is you will most likely find yourself shifting this vehicle a lot more often than you should. And if you are running manual, for example, in one of the summits, you're probably going to be downshifting when you shouldn't be, and or upshifting, and you'll end up going slow and hitting your nitrous, and the car is going to perform kind of oddly. Now, if you were to throw the car into automatic, it's probably going to be a little bit quicker. I also noticed this when testing it out in summits as well, that automatic was normally better than manual. I did notice when doing many of the summits though that I always would be a little bit faster in automatic than I was manual, but for some odd reason I always left the vehicle in manual, even though that's probably not the best thing to do. But you do find yourself probably having a good time shifting the car, even though they're going to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm sure if you guys ran some of these 4-speed vehicles in manual, you're probably going to notice that the first gear is obviously going to be a little bit longer and or sometimes shorter, but then you'll shift it and the car will actually go a little bit slower than catch up to speed. That's why you definitely have to have nitrous as well. You're going to notice that the car is going to redline, but it's still going to accelerate sometimes by 20 to 30 miles an hour over what it should be. So you could find yourself shifting a little bit too early, then the car is going to bog down and you're going to be going slower. And now you will end up finding yourself in a very bad cycle because then you're going to have to use your nitrous to get back up to speed. But before you'll know it, you're probably going to be at the next turn, then you'll have to downshift again, and for all you know, you can downshift too much. Then the car is going to be redlining, then you'll shift back up and the car is going to bog down, and I'm sure you guys can see where this is going. So depending on the 4-speed you might be driving, this is definitely going to take some time to get used to, but I would say the more you use that vehicle, you're probably going to get a lot better with it, and or probably get some crazy times with that vehicle that you did not expect yourself to get. So I did want to mention this as well. I would say the best 4-speed vehicle in the game at the moment is going to be the recently added Mazda RX3. I was really surprised from the first race that I did with the RX3 because I was not expecting this vehicle to be this good. I normally never run the 4-speed vehicles at all. Now, I'm not going to lie though, I'm a big fan of the GTO in the Rally Raid class. I love driving that car around. The lifted one's a blast, and I do find that car to be pretty dang good as well, even though it's a 4-speed, but the RX-3 I think is going to be probably the best overall 4-speed vehicle to drive in the entire game. Not only is this car going to be really good with its handling, but it also does about 250 miles an hour. Now, if you guys did actually use the one in the Motor Pass, that car only does 245, which honestly 5 miles an hour is probably not going to really hurt it all that much, because it's also going to come down to the overall handling of the vehicle as well for many of the events. And I found this car to be really fun to use on many of them as well. I mean, not only is it kind of easy to shift, and I found myself actually shifting it less and being in like third gear a lot more often because the car was holding its speed a lot better than some of the other 4-speeds would. I even found this vehicle a little bit easier to get into second gear with it because some of the other 4-speeds can kind of struggle a good amount. Obviously, even with the RX-3, once you guys shift it into third, depending on the turn, you're probably going to want to hit your nitrous on it, but the car accelerates so quickly, you can immediately put it into fourth. It will obviously have a delay because the car is a manual, but even then, I really didn't find it to be as bad with the Mazda, which is honestly pretty awesome. I do recommend trying out that car if you guys have not, and I will leave a tag on the screen, because I feel like the Mazda might end up being slightly underrated, and it might end up making its appearance in one of my underrated videos in the future. I'm honestly that surprised with how good this car is going to be. I'm looking forward to trying this thing out in summits in the future to really see what it can do and how it might compare to some of the better cars like the Superleggera. Now obviously the car is going to have that 4-speed transmission, so it might be a little bit at a disadvantage, but I do think this thing could easily compete with many of the better cars in the street class. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you like the 4-speed transmissions in this game? Do you normally run automatic or manual? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching the video.